dear listeners, and welcome to our newest episodes of LadyHeard. I'm Sylvia, and today will be your host. Here with me are my ladies, Segolen and Shaida, who will be discussing with me the art of drag. Did you know that on the 16th of July it is International Drag Day? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. By the way, say hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Drag performance are a central part of queer culture. So, ladies, time to be heard. Do you have any ideas of when drag was historically born?
You got me. I really have no idea. I'll leave it for you.
Sego, do you have any ideas maybe?
Not really, but it depends on the definition of drag, I guess. But I know that I think it was in Greek. And during antiquity, women couldn't perform, so men had to do it for feminine character. But I don't know if you would define it as drag.
Well, effectively, you are right. Kangewertz mentioned in the Harvard Gazette that already in ancient Greece and even in Shakespearean times, drag was a thing. In fact, theater performers were covering up also female roles because women were not allowed on stage. Also, in kabuki theater, in Japanese culture, we can find similar situations. The reason of that was that they were seen as dangerous and distracting because theater was rooted in religion and sacredness. So, not very surprising to have this combination as a reason to exclude women, right? At least for those times. So, drag art was ideated as a way to present themselves with a persona, an alter ego, with whom they could express themselves freely. According to Jake Hall, author of the book The Art of Drag, the term drag itself exists since albeit 1388. I repeat, 1388. And the first performance with this name took place in 1867, so almost like 5 centuries after, in Harlem at Hamilton Lodge. By the 1920s, the word was officially adopted even in Polari language, which is a slang used by the queer community to recognize themselves, to designate clothing, usually the one you are not supposed to wear. Drag is hence associated to defying boundaries and societal norms. However, it is also tied to queer liberation. And my second question to you, ladies, is what do you know about queer history in this sense? And first of all, have you ever heard of the terms like Polari language before? I mean, it's quite niche, but it's what pertains to the queer community, so maybe not everyone is familiar with this.
When it comes to the queer history, we all know that throughout our story, same-sex relationships were already documented in Asian societies, like in ancient Greece. I know a little bit of the Stonewall riots of 1969. That was kind of a turning point for the LGBTQ plus community. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's true. And what about you, Sego? Did you know any, like, the Polari as a term, or like did you know about the origins in this sense?
No, it's the first time I'm hearing that term today, so I'm learning something new. That's great. And for the history, I have to say I started to learn about queer people and drag people quite late in my life, but I love drag queen and I love to watch like RuPaul Drag Race. That's mostly my you know, so all the history I know is from modern world and modern drag queen. I don't know about much about the past.
Yeah, no, I understand. Like, of course, like Drag Race is the most recent reference that we have. In my case, when I didn't know about Polari as a term before delving into queer themes a lot more, and I didn't know about the whole history of the concept of drag. I mean, I assumed, as we were mentioning, and as Shaira was reminding us now, that it was dating back to the theater back in the day, because that was the most disruptive type of performance that was allowed on stage, where like cross-dressing, let's say, was used to portray even female characters. So in a way, male characters and male actors were allowed to change genders for the sake of performing. Back in the medieval times, there was also this reverse performance where people could dress up the way they wanted. So I don't, like, it's not very unusual for me to think that like drag as a term was born probably in 1388, because the medieval age came right before that, and then we were going to the modern history time. So I think that also had an influence in this sense with the whole concept of drag, and like doing something out of the ordinary, even if it's just for a performance or just for a day or like a week. Thank you for your answers. So, about queer history, do you know much? Like, Shaida mentioned the Stonewall riot that took place actually, yes, on the 28th of June 1969. I should be knowing this. But do you know any other, let's say, activists or any other dates, maybe from your countries, that was important for advancing the queer rights in this sense?
No, God, I'm the worst alive.
Zero.
I know the YZL is first.
Mm-hmm.
And I read an essay book written by Alexander Shea. I probably butchered the name, I'm so sorry. That was really good, and since he was a gay Asian in USA during the AIDS epidemic, I know a bit about this, but not much, and so I know why the L is first.
I got to know a bit better about the queer history and everything by giving a presentation about the history of the queer process and everything in Italy from the 70s mostly to nowadays. And I know about some comedians like Paolo Poli. So, and I know like there was another person, like an activist very famous called Mario Mieli, and one of the first trans person to be in the Italian parliament is called Vladimir Luxoria, and she also participated to a reality show at some point, but she first entered politics, and she was also a very important activist, especially in the year 2000s and 90s. I documented myself a bit more. And it didn't start with the 60s or 70s. It started earlier. It started around the 1870, more or less, when psychology developed as a science. Psychology, psychotherapists and everything, like they developed as a science, and then by investigating on the human nature and human behaviors and so on, the first studies were like from, if I'm not mistaken, 1870. And then from then on, they just started to analyze more and more, like this, homosexuality first, and then the bisexuality, and all the rest followed. But yeah, in terms of activism, we start pretty much in the 60s and 70s. So before that, I'm sure there was something, but as the memorials show, there wasn't much really recorded, also due to repression and fascism and all that we know.
Terrible, but though a great overview.
Mm.
And like Sego said,
Mm-hmm.
I learned something new today, so that's the whole point.
I'm gonna give you more like facts and names if you don't know. Many drag queens in this sense became quite vocal about the oppression that the queer community was facing, not just them as a performers and as part of the community themselves. They were facing in particular from the police and the authorities. And two of them, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, actively participated in the Stonewall riots in 1969. In fact, drag balls and shows had been going on since the 1880s, and they were often happening in secret, and police raids were pretty frequent until queers and drag queens decided that they had enough of being discriminated, disrespected, and humiliated. In fact, drag performers were often coming from marginalized communities such as Black or Latinx, and they were trying to make a living, like anyone does. And as a result of their ostracization, Marsha and Sylvia founded STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. Transvestite is the terminology that they used to use back then. Now we would use more transgender instead. So this is not to say trans people are just transvestite, it's just, the context of back then as well. And they started to advocate more and more for the people's rights, such as free education, food, healthcare, housing, and transportation, other than the right to have free autonomy, self-ownership, and self-determination over one's body, especially in the case of transgender individuals. So, all rights that everyone deserves to have, right? Not just that are not just queer oriented, but like more out of the whole types of human that we are, right? And in the 70s, such topics intersected with other movements, like the ones for women, so feminism, queer, and Black people's rights. The reason why drag art still exists nowadays is because it is not only fun and entertaining, but because it paved the way for more people to be their authentic selves and to actually have legal and societal recognition. So, ladies, do you know any drag performer, a drag king or a drag queen, who still openly advocates for human rights of any kind?
Perhaps RuPaul
Mm-hmm.
and his drag race. Like, I believe his show brought kind of a new perspective to the drag scene, showing that is something fun also and empowering, and the contestants. So what I love about them is that they seem to be so confident in their skin, so comfortable, and that's pretty much inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I think, like a lot of art, drag, you cannot be apolitical when you are a drag queen. So I think you kinda, even if you don't, just by existing, I think you're militing, or you're doing something, you're speaking out for something, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because they are still marginalized society.
Yeah, and indeed, like, I mean, it was fun, but also it made you reflect on the situation that it hasn't much changed back then. But I remember when I was in Brussels, I went to a drag show with a friend, and there was this drag queen from Spain. She didn't disclose the city, but she said like, I'm coming here to perform because at least I'm getting paid more. I get paid more for a living, which, you know, in Spain, I don't know about the compensation, but I know that a lot of drag queens and kings, especially when they perform in very small venues or they're just starting, they're relying on tips from the audience. So of course, you know, the richer the country, the more money you make, the more you can sustain yourself a bit, right? That's logic. There's not just drag queens, it's like economic situations that, you know, anyone can face, but especially like the people that are marginalized have it a bit harder than, you know, the people with privilege, and it's important to acknowledge that. Well, in if I were to name some drag performers who still openly advocates for the human rights of any kind, I had to make some research actually. And I have some names from all over the world. And I'm pretty sure I will be butchering their names. I'm so sorry to these people. But here are the names. Aishwarya Ayushman from India, Brigitte Bandit and Patagonia from US, and Najib Faizi from Afghanistan living in Germany. So I think I remember seeing Patagonia name recently because she used this name that is the brand of Patagonia, so the mountain and potentially sustainable brand, and they sued her, and then she kind of like replied back like, hey, at least I'm raising money for good. And for my experience in Slovenia, there are several drag queen that openly went to demonstrate in favor of human rights, like Mentalica, I really liked her, and also Glupa Pupa and Professor Pederik. These are 3 drag artists that used to, well, I hope they still do, perform in Ljubljana, especially in the capital of Slovenia, but also they occasionally go to other cities and venues. They were my most beloved drag queens, and in general, as Shaida, I really admire these performers because a lot of them can sing and dance, and also they sew their own stage clothes. Hello? Like, I don't know how to sew, so huge respect to that. I think I got fascinated by them, like the concept of drag queen and drag king that I discovered later, drag king to be honest. When I first saw Conchita Wurst performing at the Eurovision in 2014. Conchita Wurst was not a drag queen in this sense, but she was like a person that was wearing a beard and wearing like a beautiful wig and like a beautiful dress and like was singing beautifully, and I was like, wow, if I could have like 1% of her voice when performing, I would be like, wow, okay, I already reached like Whitney Houston levels. But no. My final question to you girls is, what is your view on drag artists, and have you ever felt admiration for a particular performer?
So I discovered drag queen like quite late in my life, but it's because we didn't have any much representation on TV. I think in France, like the Drag Race France, like came like I think we only like 3 seasons. Because it started like I think 3 years ago, that's all. But I love drag queens. They make us laugh, forget a bit about our life. They are talented people, and they have this like charisma that I'm really envious of. I would love to be as confident as them and as good as they're in their skin as they appear to be. They are performers that I really admire, and I love how quick-witted they can be. Like, I would love to be as funny as them, and to have, like, such quick wit and find their responses as quickly. They do. I'm not really original in the performers that I love. I love Trixie and Katya. I love Jinx as well because she's an actor and she does Broadway as Jinx, and I think it's really inspiring.
Thank you for sharing the names. What about you, Shaila?
I like to watch, but it's not like that I follow every single thing that they do to the point that I know where they live, their socials, anything, to be honest. But I can relate with what Sego said about how inspiring they can be.
So that was it for today, and we want to close this episode by saying that it does not matter which clothes you wear or what job you do. Your voice is important, and especially if you are a celebrity or have more privilege than others, you should use it for good causes. It is never too late to make a difference in people's lives. Well, if you like this episode, subscribe to our channels and don't forget to donate to our Buy Me a Coffee. You can find the link in the description on YouTube, but also in other platforms. Thank you for being with us once again, and see you next time. Bye!
Bye bye!
Bye.